Hi, in this video, I will walk you through how to install the Lem V4Bi voicebanks for OpenUTAU, as well as how to tune them correctly. First, scroll down and look for the appropriate download button. Choose your preferred mirror. If you see any folders, go inside the folders until you find a zip file. Right-click, click Download, Standard Download. When the download finishes, open OpenUTAU. Click Select Singer. Click Open Singer's location. This will bring up the Singers folder in your OpenUTAU installation. Please proceed to put the zip file you have downloaded in this folder. After you've put the zip folder in the Singers folder, unzip it. Delete the zip file. Next, in OpenUTAU again, click Select Singer and click Refresh. After doing so, the singer should appear on the singers list from the drop-down menu. Click the appropriate singer. Select the Phonemizer. In this case, it's going to be an ARPA Plus because Lem sings in English. You may choose to select a different renderer and a different resampler. In my case, I will use Hifisampler as I recommend it for Lem voicebanks. You will need a background process for Hifisampler to work, so please refer to the Hifisampler documentation, which I will provide in the description. If you don't choose to use Hifisampler like I did, and go with any other resampler here, for example Tips, which I also recommend, you will have to change the default value for normalization. To do this, go here, Project Expressions, and look for Normalization, Normalize. From 86, change it to 0. This will make it so that the dynamics of the recordings are preserved in synthesis. If you have just loaded a project like I did, you will be presented with a bunch of notes with words on them. Below these notes, there will be trapezoids representing the phoneme timing. Now, if we play this here set of notes without any edits, they are going to sound a little off. When was it I saw a dragonfly hovering at dawn? First of all, since I have selected Hifisampler as my resampler, I will need to press the cog icon here, go to Project Expressions, go down to Modulation Plus, and change the project default to 6. Hit Apply, and listen again. When was it I saw a dragonfly hovering at dawn? Now the first and most obvious issue is solved. However, there are still several issues here. Most importantly, in English, certain words have consonant clusters in their syllables, such as the word dragon here. When there is a consonant cluster in an English word, the timing of the phonemes shifts to the right because of something called the C-center effect. To adjust for this, in OpenUTAU we need to shift the consonants of the word a bit to the right. Let's hear the effect when we adjust for all the consonant clusters in this phrase. Let me also be clear, this effect is not uniform, and you will need to do this by ear manually. When was it I saw a dragonfly hovering at dawn? That fixes the issue of the consonant clusters. However, the timing is still not perfect thanks to the diphthong in the word fly here. Diphthongs in Arpasing, which is the system in which Lem was recorded in, are not split into their constituent parts, which means that you will not be able to adjust the timing by using the phoneme here. You will need to adjust the timing using a parameter called velocity, which you select by going to the left side of the screen and selecting velocity. You will have to deselect all the notes. Next, you will have to find the right phoneme and adjust its velocity value. You will also have to do this by ear, of course. Let's listen again. When was it I saw a dragonfly hovering at dawn? Now this phrase sounds acceptable. However, it still sounds kind of expressionless. This is because the pitch is very flat, so it sounds kind of like autotune. You will need to adjust the pink line here so that it sounds more natural. You will have to click on the vibrato to make the vibratos appear. Next, you can optionally go into the Note Properties menu, which you can open by clicking this here icon, and adjust the volume link. This makes the vibratos more natural. Don't go overboard with the parameters. Usually, less is more in tuning, especially pop songs and stuff like that. After you make all the adjustments you like to the pitch line, it will sound something like this. When was it I saw a dragonfly hovering at dawn? Each of the Lem V4Bi voicebanks comes with 2 voice colors. To access these voice colors, you will have to select the voice color parameter. When you do, you will have 2 sets of dots to pick from. By default, the lower set of dots is selected for all notes. You can select the upper set to access the head voice color of each voicebank. This voice color is intended for use in the higher range. For example, in this song, without using this voice color, it sounds like this. When was it I saw a dragonfly hovering at dawn? When you pick the voice color for head voice, it sounds like this. When was it I saw a dragonfly hovering at dawn?
To make the transition as smooth as possible, be sure to try the tone shift expression on the notes before the switch happens. For example, if the head voice note uses the F-sharp 4 pitch, the main voice color would ideally be on F-sharp 3 or E3.
Lem V4Bi voicebanks are special in that they are configured to be truly bilingual, unlike many other concatenative voicebanks. This means that you may mix and match phonemes from 2 languages, English and Japanese. In practice, this means that if an English word sounds bad because the vowel isn't pure enough, you may elect to choose the phonemes from another language to make it sound better. Let's see by way of an example. We zoom in on the word, type in the phonetic hint, press enter, and listen. When was it I saw a dragonfly hovering at dawn? For added realism, you may elect to add a breath note before a phrase when using the Lem V4Bi voicebanks. To do this, you type in AP in capital letters before a phrase, and this adds a breath. When was it? If you wish to insert a breath inside a phrase, what you do is you put an AP note inside the phrase. When was it I saw a dragonfly? It is important to note that the EXH phonemes need a bit of space because they include the exhale before the breath. Likewise, INH phoneme needs a bit of space because it includes the breath itself. If the breaths don't fit the phrase, please make sure to use the velocity parameter to adjust their speed. If you intend to add a breath note which is disconnected from the following phrase, you will have to add a note and type in it in lowercase, br. Please note that if you do type in AP, it is necessary for the note to be connected with the next phrase. Because if you disconnect it, it's going to sound pretty weird. It's still going to sound okay, but it's better if it's connected because then it gets a special phoneme here. A Japanese-specific tip I have in phrases such as this one, where the N appears before a B, you will have to change it. Let's hear how it sounds without the change. As you can hear, he uses the wrong variant. It should be like this. 夕焼け小焼けの赤とんぼ. The other cases when you might want to use a different N variant is before ka, ki, ku, ke, ko, ga, gi, ngu, nge, ngo, or when the N is at the end of a phrase, not followed by any other syllables. In the case of ka, ki, ku, ke, ko, you would use n followed by ng. Ka. In the case of the N being at the end of a phrase, you would use n followed by n. If you wish to make these voice banks hum, simply type in the letter M inside the notes, like so. These voice banks also include a special phoneme, Q, which stands for the glottal stop. It is useful for phrases where you might want a glottal stop, such as in words like bottle of water, or when you want the notes to be staccato, like here. These voice banks are configured such that if you type in the lowercase letter Q by itself in a note, the note is going to have the Q phoneme in it. However, oftentimes, you might want the Q phoneme inside a word. In those cases, you will have to type in a phonetic hint with the Q phoneme. Words with certain coda consonants may not have these consonants pronounced by default. To make these consonants pronounced, please use the ALT parameter and adjust the timing so that the consonant fits in the note. Night. Night. If you wish to force the voice bank to drop a T, you would use another special phoneme in a phonetic hint. This phoneme, the CL phoneme, is the closure phoneme. It works like so. Down, go! As you can hear, the T was pronounced. I typed in the CL phoneme right after the T consonant. Let's hear. Down, go! You will have to adjust the timing of the consonants again to make sure it sounds natural. The CL phoneme can be very short because it's just silence. Down, go! Another great thing about Arpasing is that it has something called ALT Aliases. You can access the ALT Aliases using the left menu here and selecting the alternate expression. By default, it's at 0, and you can change it to some number. In Lem V4Bi, the samples had been recorded with a lot of redundancy in mind, so there may be up to 10 alternates for each recording. This is great in certain contexts when you might want to make a word sound more natural if it's repeated over and over in a phrase, because you have access to alternate recordings. Other uses for the ALT expression include when a word doesn't sound quite right and you just want it to sound a bit different. Then you pick a different ALT and you get a better result, hopefully. The most important use case for the ALT expression in the case of Lem V4Bi voice banks is when in a phrase there exists an L or an R. The first ALT for L should be selected when L is intervocalic, meaning when L is followed by a vowel, such as in the case of the word bellow here. Let's see how it sounds by default. Bellow. As you can hear, it sounds weird. This is because by default, Lem V4Bi voice banks have a dark L. The first ALT is always the light L. Bellow. In regards to R, it's supposed to sound okay in either case. However, it's best to pick the first ALT when R comes before another consonant. Buzz. As this sounds like my accent. If you leave it without the first ALT selected, buzz. For cases when a phrase or vocalization consists of a long sustained vowel, Lem V4Bi voice banks include in them long sustained vowel samples. To access these samples, you have to type in a phonetic hint, which consists of the same vowel repeated several times. After you type in the phonetic hint, you have to split the note up into segments. The note is now segmented, however, the transitions between these samples will sound kind of awkward. To fix this, you have to drag this upper dot here to the right for each of the vowels. Let's listen to the sample. Linked with a fading memory now. And that's it. I hope you will enjoy using the Lem V4Bi voice banks. Thank you for watching.